I'm going to leave my mic here because we are actually recording this. The cable company HW Cam is here, so they can play this for the public who are not able to be here. My name is Eric Tracy. For those of you who don't know, I'm the superintendent of schools, and we felt it important to take some time to interact with the public about this project that, from what I know, I've only been in the district. This is my 10th year as an employee of the district, but this project has been on the discussion boards for 12, maybe more years, depending on who I talk to, depends on how far people bring me back. So this has been a long, involved discussion, and we're trying to bring this to fruition, and we wanted to be sure that we put all of our cards on the table, be as transparent as possible, get this out there, and today's presentation will hopefully answer any questions you have. We will ask people, if you do have questions, when we get to the end, we'll have you ask questions. Just come to the mic, just so we can, at least everybody can hear. I know, depending on where you stand, sometimes in this auditorium, you can't hear as well, so we'll just put everybody on the same mic. It'll be a lot easier. And then, as I said, we'll take questions at the end. I do have a number of people with us today that have been involved in the project. Matt Kimlin, who's down here to my left, he works for Gale Associates. They're the designer in the group. Tom Geary is our director of facilities and maintenance. Next to him, they've been kind of deeply involved in the approval process, the permitting, and the development of plans over time. On the far end, we have Brian Menegoni, the high school principal, and Craig Genualdo, the athletic director, who also served on the original committee to really lay out all the real needs from the perspective of students and coaches. So we'll have a number of people here to be able to answer questions if needed, and certainly we'll get this started. So one of the things about athletics in our district, we are part of the MIAA, and for those of you who don't know, the Cape Ann League, which is just the group of schools that we compete against within the state. We have 29 sports, 3 seasons for boys and for girls. 70% of our kids really participate in at least one sport. 70% of the kids who are at the high school participate in one sport. 92% of our teams are in academic distinction, and 100% earn sportsmanship honors, and that's a big deal. And if you've seen some of the things that are going on in high school athletics across, not only our state but others. And then in the last year, 83% of our teams qualified for the state tournament, and you'll hear that come up again as we go through this presentation. Some of the statistics that I think are important for people to know: we host here and at a number of sites across the communities 265 athletic contests, either on this campus or around. So places like the field behind where the library is, Pingree Park, and various tennis courts in various places. We travel to 355 athletic events each year. And as I said, 74% of our kids participate, with 364 unique athletes. Just looking at 21-22, and as we know, 21-22 school year was a little weird due to the COVID and kind of transitioning through sports. We were looking at unduplicated participation rates, so more kids were involved in athletics from 21-22 moving forward. We continue to have kids win awards and compete and go off to college and work through sports, and I think it's important for people to know that because it says athletics on this screen, it doesn't really mean just high school athletics. There are a number of other groups involved in our fields and working with our fields. You have physical education classes both at the middle and the high school. We have a Project Adventure site. I don't know if people know, we have the oldest Project Adventure site in the United States here on this campus. It was built in the early 70s, I think 1971. Project Adventure is right next door, so they're close by and they work closely with us. And our kids are generally outside more often than not. When you come to see our health and phys ed classes, they're on the track, they're on the field. I was here yesterday and kids were on the snowless parts of the field and track. So we take advantage of that both with the high school and the middle school. And I think it's important to note that youth sports also uses our fields. The youth sports in town, use our fields and our courts at various schools as well. So they may use the high school gym, but they also use the main field that we have out back. Sometimes they'll use a secondary field if they need a place to go or if they don't have a place to go. So this touches a lot more than just the 365 high school kids or so. The upgrade is really something that I experienced as a principal of the high school. I was a principal of the high school for 8 years, and I've been superintendent since last October 1st. Really cannot manage it based on the level of play. The level of play for us, starts generally in the late summer when double session starts for soccer and football and all of the fall sports like field hockey. We're trying to move kids in and out of the fields and rotate kids across the fields. But remember, when you have soccer team, boys and girls, you have 3 different levels, 3 different practices going on, freshman, JV, and varsity. Sometimes they come together, but oftentimes they'll spread out. So now you're using multiple fields. This happens across here and across the community. We have kids at various parks and locations around the communities, and if you own a house with a lawn, you know that planting grass in November is not a thing in New England. So trying to upkeep the grass has been problematic. The 2 pictures you see behind me are early in the season, especially the one under the word update. That's early on in the season, and we really worked this year to a number of complaints from local neighbors, and rightfully so, that we were watering our fields, but we were trying to grow grass so that we had places for our kids to play. Our track is really nearing its useful life. If you go out to the track, if you walk on the track at all, you will experience some divots and ditches that are approximately a foot around in various spots. We really pushed that to its limit. We don't have turf, so we don't have the flexibility of moving all of these fields on and off and keeping things in play. How that results for us is when the kids get into tournament play, which happens at the end of a season. So I'll give you an example. Girls soccer went deep into the tournament. They were not able to play their home tournament, which is a playoff game, their home playoff game here on our campus. They had to go somewhere else, and because of the fields. So I think that's an important piece of that. There's no lighting, so that kind of limits when we can use it. You get into the fall. When I was in high school back in the 80s, the coach used to make us all go get our cars and put our headlights on around the fields. Well, we can't do that here. It wouldn't work. But lighting would vastly increase the use of the field and the opportunity use of the fields. Within reason, I think, too. I think the reality is, they're back in 2017 when this was discussed, the lighting was discussed, there were some issues and some agreements made about, hey, when do they go off? And I think one thing you'll learn today is the number of the changes in the technologies, both with LED lighting and the turf we'll talk about, are very different. It's much easier to focus LED lighting and control the, quote, spread of light, if you will, whereas 10 years ago, a stanchion of lights on a football field might light up, more than just the football field, and that for people who live close by is important, and I think that's important for us to realize. And then the tennis courts, our tennis team, we have about 100 kids out of the 450 students here who play tennis, boys or girls. We do not have tennis courts, so it's fascinating to find places for them. Craig Genualdo spends much of his time trying to rent courts at various locations so that they can compete, so that they can just go and practice. I mean, we have a number of local courts, but we're also competing with people in the community. Pickleball is a hot thing right now, and it's tough to get around the pickleballers when you're trying to use the court, and so we want to be fair about that. So I think those are the things that really highlight it. When you look across the Cal League, our kids compete here on grass and sometimes on just dirt with a soccer ball or a field hockey ball, and then they go to a next door community to compete that's on turf. It is a very different game. It is a very different game when your soccer ball is coming through 3 inches of grass or divots or whatever, or your field hockey ball versus the realities of turf. There are no divots and dents, so your ball is moving faster. So the game changes, and I think it's an important aspect of the greater discussion. There's a chart on here behind me that just outlines, 11 of the 12 schools that we compete against have lights. 9 of the 12 have turf, and then 10 of the 12 have their own tennis courts. So there's a little bit of comparison for just where our kids go. So, in the position of turf, 9 other schools that we compete against, our kids have to go and kind of, quote, learn really quickly how to shift to playing on turf versus grass. This is a view from above, partway through a football season. As you can see, it's moving into fall. We think it's like October, I believe. You can see from the top, there's mostly more dirt than grass. These are our backfields, and these are considered practice fields, but we use them quite often for anything we can. This is our football field right around the same time. You can see the whole middle. There is no grass. It's the nature of the game. Anyone who's played football or a cleat sport like soccer or even field hockey, these fields get ripped up really quickly. And to maintain them during the fall season is extremely difficult. When you get into mid to late October, it's hard to grow grass while kids are still competing every single day on the fields. So some of the goals of this project. If you paid any attention to some of the school committee meetings, select board meetings, FinCom meetings, we've talked a lot about losing students over time. When I took over as principal here, there were 685 kids attending Hamilton Wenham Regional High School. 685 or 6, I believe. Currently, there are 450 students at Hamilton Wenham Regional High School. In talking with families who choose to leave, there are a number of reasons. Some are academic. Some are because they just do. They feel like their children should be at a private school in high school. And a number of them talk about our facilities. So we really want to be able to build a place where we can keep kids on campus and bring people kind of into this level of excitement that says, yeah, I want to be here. I want to be part of the Generals teams, and I want to be part of our Hamilton Wenham community. I think it'll go a long way. Enhancing the youth and community athletic experience. I don't know how many times Craig Genualdo has to call up a youth coach or the rec department and say, sorry, the kids can't use the field Sunday because it's a mud pit, or they can't use the field Sunday because it's just really unplayable. So we want to really enhance that connection. I think it's an important experience for our younger kids to see and experience, what it's like to be with older athletes. I remember very distinctly when I played in Little League in the late 70s, I remember very distinctly meeting Haverhill High School baseball players and looking up and saying, wow, that's what I want to be and what I want to do. And I think part of that is our responsibility as a community to be able to make those connections. Relieving pressure on town parks, fields, and courts. It's really a similar situation. Grass everywhere. Everybody's trying to maintain it. Everybody's trying to keep it so that it's playable, usable. And I think it would in conversations with the recreation department, athletic department, and youth sports, it would be a good opportunity for us to be able to do that. We need to address our accreditation at the high school. We were recently received accreditation again, but we are on warning for one of the 6 foundational areas, which is called learning spaces, primarily due to our outside learning spaces, our athletic learning spaces. So that's an issue that they are expecting us to contend with and work to improve. And then building community and attraction for families. That's what I talked about, people leaving. When you can shift your child to Pingree, if you haven't been on that site, it's beautiful. It's gorgeous. It's a great place to be. It's a great place to play. And I think it's an opportunity for our kids to be able to do that same thing and build that same community pride for our kids and for our community so that families say, I want my kids to be there. And it's more than athletic fields. I get that. This is a small piece of a really large puzzle I'm working on as superintendent. There are other facilities issues that we run into right now, like our science labs. If you went into our science labs and you compared them to something next door in the biotech company in Ipswich, you would say, wow, our kids are working in the in the Stone Age versus what's happening now in science. And to be able to keep up with that is important. So there are other things that come under that facility. I don't want to, speak falsely and say it's just all about fields, because fields is a part of the bigger puzzle. And again, I think it's really building an opportunity for us as a community to come together, say on a Friday night for a football game. That type of experience for kids and families is a big deal. We can't do that here. We don't have that ability. And I think even for youth sports, on a Saturday evening, they can run a couple of games in youth sports. It's a big deal to play in the big, really in the big kids field. And I think those opportunities now grow for us, and we enhance those opportunities for all of our residents. So some of the components, in case you don't know, and I'll show you some pictures as well. The main field, which is called the football field, I'm just going to call it the main field because more than football happens on this field. Soccer, field hockey, lacrosse. So there's a lot of things that happen through the school year on that field, including all of our gym classes. Synthetic field on the main field that would have lighting, and it would be synthetic turf. Just beyond it, where the current JV baseball field is, would be a synthetic turf multi-sport field that would also encompass the JV field. So you'd have the opportunity to have baseball and other practices or other games on that field. Both of those fields would be lit. And then a synthetic softball field, where our current softball field is, it would be synthetic. Again, it's a highly used field between schools and youth. Youth uses it almost all summer long, so it's hard to regrow grass again. And that would be lit as well. 4 tennis courts. My tennis coach always says, why can't we get 5? It would be so much easier. But the reality is, given the property and the dimensions and the wetlands restrictions we have, 4 will fit. And it would be, for those of you familiar with the property, they would be on the little piece of land just beyond where the home stands are, over where our Project Adventure is. So there would be 4 tennis courts. Currently, they are not planned to be lit, but we do want to have that conversation. And again, the relocation of field events. So right now, if you talk about triple jump, high jump, pole vault, things we still do, we would relocate some of those just further out into the back field so that they would be safe. When they're tossing a javelin, we're not going to be throwing javelins on a synthetic field. So we want to be able to move those into a safer, more useful location. ADA compliance is important for us right now across the entire back area. There are some ADA compliance issues. If you have ever had to bring a family member in a wheelchair to a graduation event, you've experienced that. That's important for us to fix. It's also important for us to meet the requirements of the laws, and we work with our designer, Gail, on that, and we'll continue to look at things that may come into play. And that could be, and I'll give you an example, right now the press box would be considered not ADA compliant. If you're in a wheelchair and you're reporting the game, you can't get to the actual viewing area because it's stairs. So what ends up happening is depending on the height of your press box, you end up putting in a lift or an elevator so that people now have full access to the press box. And then an amenities building. In the amenities building, we've talked about a number of different variations, something that includes a concession stand and bathrooms. We do not have bathrooms anywhere in our fields other than portables that we bring in for big events like graduation. If you need to use the restroom at a sporting event, you will go all the way back to the building, to the athletic section near the high school gym. So this is a map of what we're kind of planning. This is a very generic version. It's really designed to give you an idea of where we're at. Everything you see here is currently in the same place. We're not moving a field anywhere. So where you see the track, the ring, and then the field to the right, you'll notice it's outlined in red. That has already been approved by CONCOM, Conservation Commission. That was approved back in 2017. And those approvals have been extended to, I believe, October 24. The new areas that we're currently working with CONCOM on are the newest part of the projects are the softball field in blue, the tennis courts, and then the relocated field events. And relocating field events is really putting down a concrete pad. Anybody that's thrown the discus or the shot put, there's a concrete pad that you put down and make sure you have X amount of distance of safe flight for the discus or the shot put or even the javelin way in the back. So those events have yet to be approved, and we're still waiting. We've been working with Concom, I think 4 meetings, Tom? 3? 3 meetings, still going with them, working out the kinks and questions that people have had, the community have had, and we'll continue to do that. So that's kind of an overall view of what it looks like from the air. It's no different than what's already there. That baseball field to the right, lower bottom, is already there. It's our quote JV field. It's not really, doesn't have anything like dugouts, if you would, so there's some safety enhancements that would occur along with this project, especially with the softball field. Same thing, if you've been over by the softball field, there are really no safe places to hide from a softball if they are coming out of the field. So we're looking at, really safety issues as well as we build into this, and I'll give you a little bit different view. This view gives the outlines of the wetlands, which are the kind of dotted lines that you can see all around the outside edges. This view here is more of a stylized view of what you might see from above with the logos and the court placement, track placement, and things like that. The 2 greenish yellow in the back are current fields that are already there, they already exist. They're there, they're not new. Somebody asked me that the other day, are those new fields? No, but if you walk out back, they are all there. So those would just remain, and we would continue to treat them just as we do now as practice fields, because again, the grass does not last very long. So the cost is the big deal, the real issue. Approximate cost is $15 million. That does have some built-ins for cost expansion over time. If you've been paying attention lately to the news or to anything, even your own household, things are more expensive. My grocery bill is much more expensive than it was 2 years ago. But the $15 million does encompass a 20% cost to be able to deal with any inflated items or any cost increases that occur over time. There are some offsets. So we're trying to reduce the overall cost of this project to the community. The first thing we are doing is using excess and deficiency money from FY22. We are going to request at town meeting, when we present our budget, this will be built in, a transfer into a stabilization fund that the regional school district holds that was approved in October of 22. So that last October special town meeting, we had a stabilization fund approved for the school department. Our intention then, and I said it then and I'll say it now, is to put excess and deficiencies that we can move into that fund to the tune of 1.7-ish million, $1.698 million. So we'll move that from excess and deficiency into stabilization fund with the approval of the budget. Both the Hamilton and the Wenham Community Preservation Committees have voted to support grants for this project. Hamilton in the amount of $800,000. As we do with all of our assessments to the towns, we break them out basically 2/3, 1/3. That's kind of the formula that we've used for years here. So Wenham, in order to release the Hamilton fund, Wenham has agreed to grant $400,000 towards the project. And those monies basically show in the form of the 2/3, 1/3 breakdown of the way we assess the communities as well. And then there's outside fundraising happening right now. There is a private group unrelated to the schools called HWAFIC, the Hamilton Wenham Athletic Facilities Improvement Committee. They are a 501c3 group who is, they've been working on this project longer than I have. I think that's important to know. They have been, many of them involved in this project since the conversation began many, many years ago. I think it's important to know that because, the one question that came up, people said, well, if you bring this number, $15 million to town meeting on April 1st, why should we raise funds if you get that approved? That's not the way we want to operate. We really want to work to raise funds to offset these costs for the taxpayers. We realize it's a huge amount of money. So we're looking at that group working to raise their goal. They set a goal of $2 million. In talking to the members of their group, the last conversation I had with them is they were right around the $500,000 mark, with the intention of having $1 million by the time we get to town meeting. So that's an important piece of the puzzle. It's also important to note the fundraising wouldn't stop, because the timeline of the project wouldn't start right away. So the group is working to continue to fundraise even beyond town meeting, to look at various opportunities to bring in bigger fundraisers that we may work with them, with the school committee, for naming rights. So there's still an opportunity to gain some more funds towards this cost. So if all went as laid out here, the school budget gets approved, the grants for CPC get approved, and the donations come in at, say, $2 million, you're looking at $4,898,000 off the top of the price tag of $15 million. And again, there's still 20% contingencies built in there. We may not use that, so it may be even less than that over time. But I just think it's important for everybody to know where we're at right now. When you're looking at the project itself, the timeline of the project, we are planning to kick this project off, like put a shovel in the ground as early as we can, in March of '24. People say, why are you waiting so long? Well, there are a lot of processes, as you know, that all of these votes still have to occur. We still have to get our permitting complete. We still have to make sure we have a project manager to help us to make sure everything goes off as planned. We have to do bid documents to make sure everything follows the bidding laws. So there's a lot of things that we'll have to do between now and then, and we're trying not to disrupt every single sports season, which may or may not be possible. But if we can get a shovel in the ground in November of '24, the reality is the project could be done in March of '24. The reality is the project could be done November-ish, December-ish of '24, with things like landscaping probably taking place the following spring. We're not going to be doing any planting in November and December, but so that's kind of a bigger look at some of the ways we're trying to offset costs. Fundraising is variable, I understand that, but I do think it's important to know that there is a fundraising group that's out there working outside of the school district, that's comprised of people who live in the community, who are invested in this as well, and also pay taxes and are invested in reducing taxes as well. So we'll continue to work together to try to bring these numbers down as we move forward. So, and I'll certainly take any questions that people have. And again, if you can come up to the mic, it would be better, or I can pass you a mic, one of the two, just to be able to give people the opportunity. Do you want to run the mic around? Oh, okay. Craig will run the mic around. Excellent. If you can just state your name for us.
Jack Lawrence. I did call just to get some perspective on this thing. Masconomet, who said they have no synthetic fields at all, which I thought was interesting, and Marblehead, which has what you refer to here, and I think is a better way to refer to it, a main field as their multi-purpose operation, obviously, as you say, which accommodates male, female, it's a generalist field that accommodates all kinds of different sports. Did you look at this from the standpoint, I have to tell you that I have a real problem thinking of a synthetic field, the outfield of a baseball field with three people standing around out there, the wear and tear. I understand there's a multi-purpose element, and probably if you build a boys' field, you got to build a girls' field. So I understand there's all kinds of swings and roundabouts here, but the tennis courts make some sense. But did you look at the possibilities of doing this? What would happen if you just did the main field with lights? And I see lights to what extent is irrigation a problem? To what extent, if you had better irrigation on the fields, would the natural fields stand up better? Is that a first, is there a phased approach to this thing that might work? Thank you.
I think Craig you want to answer?
Yeah, so thank you for the question. They're all excellent questions. I think I'm going to try to take each point that you said and answer. If I miss something, just let me know. If you look at the outfield of the baseball field, Eric, I don't know if there's a way you can zoom in on that, but there's actually an additional rectangle field that goes through that outfield that is going to accommodate boys and girls soccer, field hockey, and boys and girls lacrosse as well. So as far as the utility and the multi-purpose type of function, if it was just 3 baseball players, you'd make an excellent point. The reason why that was turfed was so that we could get all those other sports out there as well. The other question you asked was irrigation checked to try to use our fields? Yes. As a matter of fact, last summer we replaced the irrigation systems around the entire campus. It does help. You still have the outcome come mid to late October where the fields become like you saw in that picture. The stadium's essentially, I don't know if it's built on a swamp exactly, but there's only so much that you can do. The irrigation helps extend it a bit, keeps the roots strong a bit, but really disintegrates at the worst possible times when, Eric mentioned a story about our girls soccer state tournament team finding the road game. What was worse this year was our boys soccer team and girls soccer teams had nowhere to practice. They had nowhere to practice for the last 3 weeks of the season. So I don't know if I answered your questions, but I tried to.
I think it's important to note also that we didn't replace our irrigation systems, we just did a full head inspection and replaced our inspection.
Yes.
The irrigation system's been there for years.
Yes.
Kathy St. Pierre, just following up on the fields. What has been done as far as looking into improving the organic fields that are there? If you water a field that isn't properly drained, that doesn't have any care to the grass that's there or the turf that's there, you're just watering a poor field. And during COVID, when I walked every day through the high school, there was nothing done there. There would have been an opportunity to have redone these fields. You have $15 million, and I'm not sure if putting in fields where there's municipalities in Massachusetts that are looking at restricting them and eliminating them because of the health concerns. I'm not sure if that's best. If you water fields that are just mud anyways and have crabgrass in them, you're not going to get anything. But if you invest a certain portion of that money into, and I want the kids to have great fields, they should, put in your bathrooms and put in fields that are turf made to withstand longer seasons and irrigate them, not at noon in a drought, but at times where it's more beneficial, then you're eliminating the health concerns. I mean, then you talk about the disadvantage of soccer players playing on these fields and then they play on turf fields. Well, the United States national soccer team refuses to play on anything but grass. So, in the National Football League in 2022, their players have petitioned to not play on artificial turfs and to remove them. They can afford to play on anything they want because of the health concerns, some of the cancers that have come up in players. They're just looking into it. So I'm just thinking that we're going to get into a situation here where we're investing all this money, thinking we're doing something great for the community, and we're going to end up with a nightmare environmentally, health-wise. You can't get rid of these fields in only 8 to 10 years. It's a huge expense. There's all kinds of concerns about injuries, and I just think we need to present both sides and do what's best for the long term. And I'm not sure this is it.
Thank you, appreciate that. I'm gonna ask Matt to answer the organics question versus the turf question.
How's everyone doing? I'm Matt Kinnan with Gill Associates. I'll try and answer as much as I can. There was a lot to unpack there, but as far as organic versus the turf fields, even if you were to replace the fields and with the use that it gets, it does get very compacted pretty quickly, and then the irrigation system doesn't have that opportunity to get in the grass and have it grow with the amount of uses that we're seeing at these fields. And as they mentioned, the uses are basically all day. There's the kids using it during the day, all the sports are using it after school. So there's really no opportunity for it, one to rest, and for two, it gets compacted and then the grass can't grow. And then, what else was there? I have been hearing a lot the soccer fields, professional soccer, they only use grass, and then football players, that's really, they really have a lot of money to spend on, you know, keeping their fields in top shape. They can, I mean, they could rip it up every week, and they could replace the grass every week if they wanted to, because they have the funds to do that. Unfortunately, with most schools, they don't have the funds where they can replace fields every year, and turf is the logical way to go, so that the kids can use the fields as much as they can. Most football teams as well, they really only need to use, they have practice fields that, most of their practice fields are turf. And then they just play their one game a week, or 8 games a year on their field. So they really have that luxury that they don't have to use it as much. What else? I think that's most of the questions. Thank you.
Matt, is it true on the drainage part? Can you talk a little bit about drainage on the water storage versus drainage? Is there a difference?
Yeah. So underneath the fields, all the synthetic turf fields, there is a thick layer, usually about 10 to 8 inches. I believe we have some decent drainage soils here, which when they're not compacted at the top, underneath. So we're proposing 8 inches of crushed stone, and each field has a concrete curb around, and it holds all the water in it. So the water goes straight through and infiltrates into the ground underneath the fields, and only discharges in very extreme events. Even in the 100-year storm, we call it, we in our calculations, we aren't really seeing any water that's leaving the site. Most of it infiltrates into the ground, and that way it's underneath the field, and you don't have to worry about it sitting on the top.
Hi, my name is Amy Mills. I'm a geography professor.
Is it Amy Mills?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right.
And many decades of research shows how important it is to think about the environment for the health of people. We have healthy fields, we have healthy kids, we have healthy families, we have the healthy people who play in the band, and everybody who said, all families center their life around the events that happen. I graduated from Beverly High School. I was certainly part of the culture where I grew up. It's also true that there are a lot of aspects, I think some of these concerns have been raised but not really addressed here, that in terms of research that has established, not just incidentally in terms of professional soccer and football players choosing to play on grass, but actual hard results from kids playing on turf, scraping knees and the chemicals, the heat that reflects off the turf in the summer, how hot that is, how fast the balls go. So it's a different game than when I was playing soccer in the 80s. It's also true that these turf fields don't just drain underground. The whole area around here is a wetland. It's all going to drain into the Mouse River, which flows into the Ipswich River, which is a public water supply. So the PFAS are forever chemicals that do not degrade. And they've been of such concern. Last week there was an editorial in the Salem Evening News about this. The whole town of Boston, which certainly does not have a luxurious budget for its public schools, has banned turf fields for this reason. And it's also the case that in Marblehead they did a huge study, and they determined that the organic approach to the fields is actually much cheaper than the maintenance of turf fields. There's also nothing said about what do we do when the turf field eventually does degrade. It's going to go someplace else, or it also emits the PFAS. The water doesn't collect in the basin underneath the field. The water flows down through that basin and down, because of the topography, to the northern and eastern part of the field, which flows into the river. So it's affecting everything that lives on and around that river, including people. And I get it, like the amount of effort and pain in the butt that you've been experiencing in terms of how do we have people outside having fun, and just the help, like every kid is stressed and on screens, so the more time outside, the better, and I think that's probably the most important issue. But there is a choice. There is a difference between just flat grass that's compacted and putting a basin under the grass and using an organic research-based strategy. It does require investment, but we have a huge composting facility that has tons of compost. They do things like they put organic-based matter on it to fertilize it. It's not one and done, it does require maintenance. But their cost-benefit analysis determined that it was actually cheaper, and it poses no risk. Because this issue affects the entire community, like every family is connected to this issue because of how much our culture revolves around being outside and supporting our kids. Every family, every weekend, 2-3 games, with the kid. I mean, I know it. And the band kids, it's the same. But maybe there's a way that the community can band together to find areas that play on higher ground or areas that have better drainage. Public schools historically have been built on areas that are unwanted because it's nobody's going to use it for real estate value. It's common for public schools to be built in areas that are wetlands or wetlands that aren't good for agriculture or for fancy real estate. Well, this is the problem here. So but there's a win-win here in terms of finding other ways that it could accommodate this. It's not a maybe or a little bit of harm. It's a definite public health risk and a risk also directly to the kids who play on it. And the type of game, how fast those balls go on turf fields. I realize they're playing on it in other areas, but to make it really safe for them. The town could also face a lawsuit from people in abutting properties who are measuring their water quality now and what's going to happen when the PFAS do run off on the turf fields. That's a whole other level of pain in the butt that nobody wants to experience, and it creates other polarity. There is a real choice here. The turf fields themselves will require cost and maintenance. They're going to have to be disposed of at some point someplace else, and we haven't talked about that. And we haven't talked about the unique ecosystem of wetlands in our area, or the drought in the Ipswich River. All of this is going to be impacted. This is a thumbnail, but every single aspect of development in this area is itself a tiny mosaic that's getting eaten up by development. We have such a good choice here to prevent our kids from getting sick and preventing health concerns in the long term with drinking water. And based on the fact that other towns are paying a ton of money to have them removed, it seems like we have an opportunity to make a smart research-based choice. We can make a high choice here for the good of all concerned and still have our kids outside, because we know, and especially after the pandemic, it's needed more than ever. I mean, we all have to be outside. So I appreciate you hearing my concerns, and I appreciate the effort you're making into making this such a beautiful environment for the kids in our town.
Thank you, and appreciate the eloquence and the way you stated your case. And one of the things I've done is lots of reading on these forever chemicals, so PFAS. So it's, I didn't put it in a slide because I knew it would come up as a question. So I think it's important for us to talk about it. Any information that I have, I'm going to pass it off to Matt Narmal. I'm going to actually start this, and Matt can jump in if I'm out. But I think all the research I'm doing with the EPA, the Mass DEP, looking at even reporting that's being done by companies that do these installs. One was Weston & Sampson. I read a report. The city of Portsmouth, New Hampshire, had similar concerns, brought up similar concerns. In the fall 1922 study they did of a ball field, everything that they looked at all the materials, each of the layers, and did a study, and came out that PFAS levels were under the limits of they were using the Mass DEP, if I remember correctly, limits and European limits, and they came in under those numbers. And the same thing with the information that we're getting from the Mass DEP and the EPA. It really is showing that the numbers, the tested numbers, if you will, are still well under acceptable ranges. One of the things that I think is important to note is, as we bid these fields out, Gail gave us a document that actually went to Concom that shows one of the statements that we put in bid documents will actually ask that the materials be tested before they're installed for PFAS. And I forget how many off the top of my head, but there's a specific number of PFAS that they test for. 6 that are regulated that they'll test for before installing any of the materials. They have to be certified. Do you want to talk about that process a little bit? Or? Okay.
Yeah, so typically, your concern has been brought up a lot lately for a lot of our projects, and we have in the bid documents where everything that is going in has to be tested and approved before it goes in the ground. And it has to have limits that are non-detect or below what's regulated. As of right now, there's 6 that are regulated. The typical test, it looks for about 25 of them. And there's a lot more that where the technology is trying to play catch up at this point. There's a lot of PFAS that we don't know how to test for. But as far as our turf fields, everything has to be below the limits, and we have seen testing done on existing grass fields on a couple projects that we've been working on where the PFAS limits just in the soil are above reportable limits, and putting in these turf fields would be getting rid of the PFAS soils and putting in a product where we approve it that it has minimal PFAS in it. If like, I don't want to say none, because that is impossible. It's in everything. And I also want to just make sure I state that I'm not a toxicologist. This is just my understanding of the data that we've looked at, and by the different companies that we've worked with. We've been working with for a while, especially since Boston came out, and they came out with that ban of turf products. We found in that article, we did find a lot of misleading information and information that we believe is not true, and we are formulating responses to those. As far as recycling, there are different ways to recycle the turf. It doesn't just go to a landfill. There's plenty of different ways that new companies are coming out with to recycle it. There's a company that just is starting this year to actually try and recycle the turf and reuse it as turf for different fields. As you can probably see, it's pretty tough to do that, since you're using 10 to 15-year-old turf to try and use it as turf again. But companies are coming out to do that. A lot of different companies are taking the turf and using it for recycled wood plank boards for decks and stuff like that. So that's just another example of different companies that are taking turf and recycling it, and more companies are popping up by the day. It's a topic that's on a lot of people's minds, and companies are listening.
I think I'm going to push that a little bit further. The most of what I'm reading, I think I've read 8 or 9 different reports specific to crumb rubber. Crumb rubber, for those of you who don't know, crumb rubber is a material that is used in the infill or in between the blades of grass that has been used for years, and go back to the 60s, and that's what they've been using. And crumb rubber is essentially ground up tires. So automobile tires, we know all about what those are made out of. Our expectation is to avoid that, because we're seeing that just about all the testing that's done, or the concerns that are raised, have been raised around crumb rubber as the infill, as an issue. Those are reading reports and trying to figure out where people are focused and trying to learn more about this myself. That's one of the things that comes up quite often, and it's something that if you get a chance, Matt put out a little container that has, I think it's 7 different types of infill that are being used now outside of crumb rubber. Some of them can be organic, like coconut husks and sand. I think walnut shells. There's some other stuff being made that are environmentally safe and friendly, and I think that's important again for the conversation to be able to talk about those things, because the infill, from what I've learned in my many readings. In fact, I was reading a 500-page report last night from the EPA, and everything seems to focus on this crumb rubber material. And where it comes down to longevity, I think that was another part of somebody's question. What happens in 10 years when it has to be replaced? 2 things to look at. If we do go down this road and say we're going down this road, we're going to install turf fields, and then let's use number 10 years. It could be more or less depending on use, but in 10 years, if these turf fields now have to be replaced, we would go through the process of replacement, go through the community. Like Manchester Essex is doing right now, they're replacing 2 of their field carpets that have been synthetic for a while. I'm not sure how many years they have. Yeah, that's what I heard. So roughly 12. I'm just going to use 10 as a number. They would basically replace that. And again, somebody said to me Thursday, well, who's going to pay for that? I think the reality is, if we go down this road, we do have to build in a longer-term maintenance plan and take advantage of the stabilization fund to be able to set monies aside for this over time. Right now, it's around $800,000 to replace a coat carpet, the top part, the grassy part. And that, that's something that, again, is going to be long-term planned over time. So we're seeing changes in materials. We're seeing technology changes across the little grass blades. I was having a conversation with someone earlier. If you were 10 years ago, you went to a turf field, the grass blades were sharp. They were abrasive. Now the newer turfs are starting to see a much softer brand of material, so that kids aren't getting all ripped up. And go back to when I played ball. The fields were really concrete. They were hard when you played on the field. Now they have shock cushions underneath them, along with the infill that acts as a double kind of cushioning agent for these fields. And then let's talk about longevity, right? Oh, we're seeing the technology change in recycling. There's a company that's trying to come into the United States. They're called Rematch. They're out of Norway. They're building their second 100% recycling of turf. That's what they do. It's fascinating. I've spent a lot of time on their website and tried to learn more about what they do and how they do it. And they claim to recycle 100% of turf fields. And that's an interesting piece of the puzzle. As they now try to move into the U.S., that is their current plan. They're just finished building their second European factory, and planning to do that as well. So I think that you're seeing the technology change all over the place and improve and increase. And as Matt said, people are reusing materials, separating materials, trying to it's like shaking dirt out of a carpet, I guess. When you have this carpet of plastic grass, and then you're taking sand out of it and rubber pellets and separating them out. So the process is pretty in-depth and difficult, but I do see a lot of change over time in the technologies that are available. And I assume we'll continue to see that. So, there's another question right here.
Hi, my name is Anne Giroux. I'm a direct abutter to this project, so my property is just to the north of the softball field. I reiterate what several of the speakers have said already. And in particular, with respect to the chemicals, I applaud the town considering infill other than the crumb rubber, which my understanding is very harmful to the environment and to the players. With respect to the PFAS, my understanding is that all artificial turf fields have PFAS. That you cannot get an artificial turf field that's free of PFAS. And with respect to the EPA limits, I also understand that the EPA is looking at some of these limits right now, and there's an expectation that they will be lowered. I've also read that with respect to groundwater, people are saying that there's no safe limit for PFAS. So I think, again, the technology and the ability to test these chemicals as we discover that they live forever, that they accumulate in the environment, the health impacts on people. I understand that they're in a lot of products today, but I think the emphasis is to get them out of those products, and I don't think that's a justification for adding additional PFAS to the environment through these artificial turf fields. To me, the project seems excessive. Again, I can understand certain parts of the project. I can understand redoing the track. I can understand the need for the tennis courts. You've explained about the outfield for the baseball. That leaves the softball field. Again, I'm not sure why you'd need artificial turf for the outfield softball field. So again, there's aspects that seem reasonable, but the whole thing seems excessive. Also, as a direct abutter, I really haven't seen any information about the lighting, how high the lighting will be. There's a nice tree canopy between my property and the softball field. I don't know how high the lights are proposed to be. I don't know what kind of mitigation there'll be to prevent glare. I don't know what kinds of proposals there are about when lights would be turned on. What about loudspeakers? I know you talked about a Friday night game. There will be impacts on the abutters, and I think that we need to understand what the school is doing to try to mitigate those. One of the other questions I had is at a prior Conservation Commission hearing, someone mentioned that during recess, some of these areas would be used by the students. Could you just clarify for me where students may be having recess?
Sure, so I'm gonna go up and see if I can point on this map here. So currently, our kids go out to recess outside of if you look at the Miles River Middle School front door, the cafeteria is right there. And where they go out to recess would be to the left of this field. There's a basketball court that's currently there, and that's where the 6th through 8th graders spend their recess time. When it's warmer, they can go out to that field. When it's not snowy or muddy or whatever, they do go out to that field. They can play kickball or whatever. But generally now, if you come to the school, there are seating areas out front of where the main entrance is, and then over near where they currently are in the basketball court. That's to the left of the main entrance of the building. Did you think it was different?
No, I have been working with children at recess group.
Yeah, it's possible. It depends. It could be also a gym class there. That's the other thing is we have gym classes going on at the same time. So it's more of a scheduling thing, which is what he gets to deal with, but it's really trying to figure out where everybody can go at the same time. If gym classes are out in high school or middle school, and then lunches and recess, and there's a lot of moving parts to that. So that's currently where they're at. That you probably can see it from where you are in the little basketball court area. So, good question, lighting. Do you know off the top of your head, Matt, how tall those lights are? I don't remember.
They're 50, 70 feet high.
Yeah.
So typically lighting is about 50 to 70 feet high, and I had spoke with you before, but I'll let everyone know that the technology for lighting has come a long way, and they've been typically trying to make the poles higher so that they shine down on the field instead of going outside. And a lot of the fields that we put in, and we've taken drone photos. It's pretty crazy to see how quick the light dies off outside of the field. It basically does not go outside of the field at all. And every project that we do provide an illumination plan that shows just exactly how many candles, it's called candles make it, and where the light stops. So yeah, each pole will have LED lights, and each individual light is pointed in an exact position before it's shipped out, and then when it arrives, all they do is they just hang it up, and it points it to an exact location.
Thank you. I think that's one of the things that a number of people asked me about the lighting part. There is an agreement. I want to just finish answering your question. There was an agreement that was made, I believe, in 2015. Maybe somebody here can change my mind, but back between 2015 and 17, there was an agreement made to have everything shut off at 9 o'clock. What was it? 8 during the week, 9 a week. Okay, thank you. So that agreement, as far as I know, is still in play. I haven't heard anything different. I don't think it makes much sense to push that beyond those time limits. That was agreed, I think, when that first lower section was approved, what we call the red section, if you will. So I think that is remaining in place. I would guess the Concom would continue to say that that's part of the project. So I don't see any reason why we wouldn't adhere to that. You get all of your pieces, you got a lot.
Well, I guess the question is, what is the lighting plan being available? Because to me, there's a big difference between a 50-foot high light that we need to do, street canopy versus one that's a
Sure.
And as we all know, LED lights can be pretty bright. I understand where you reduce, but they can still be pretty bright. So, why don't we just see more details
Sure.
about exactly what's proposed in the litigation?
Can you talk to that, the detailed lighting plans?
Yeah, so we do have lighting plans. I don't think it was in the Conservation Commission submittal because it's not really an environmental thing. But we do we have illumination plans that I don't know if I have them printed out with me, but if you want a copy of them, I can definitely. I have your information, so I can definitely forward over to you. And the illumination plans that we typically have, they show, like I said earlier, little candles that show how many candles are at a certain area, and it shows throughout the whole field, and then it'll show where it's zero. So they have the company that makes them. They have a lot of experience with that stuff. So.
Right, we'll make it available on the website, and I want to let everybody know that. You go to the school district website, and you go to the high school, and then, the top right tab, I can't remember now off the top of my head, but the website has all of the information, whatever information we're putting out there, including the ComCon submissions, a 200-page document about some of the PFAS issues. We'll make lighting plans available, and certainly can continue to just put stuff on there so that people have access to it and ask questions. And again, the reason we're doing this is we want to be able to hear the concerns and work with the community and try to figure out the best way to move forward on this project. It's a big project. We understand that. We also understand there are a lot coming down the pipe. Jim Purdy sitting back there is always asking me questions like, okay, what about the roof of the high school that's coming, or the elementary school project that's coming? So we're trying to really figure out ways to work with the communities to continue to keep some of those projects in place, if you will, or in a reasonable time frame. Ask a question. Does you have a question? Oh, question. I'm not going to go first.
Question, Bill Shields on the Bay Road. I'm wondering, first off, whether the Finance Committee has acted on this. I understand the Hamilton Finance Committee has voted unanimously against the project. I also want to know what the Selectmen's recommendation is. We're coming up on the April 1st town meeting, and I have seen no recommendations. I think that's rather important. Lastly, a second issue, I would like to know what other permitting there is that you were talking about other than Concom permit.
Sure. It's a great question. Jim Purdy can maybe I'll answer the side of that thing. But I do know you are correct. Hamilton has voted against it. And talking to Joe DeMello yesterday, Hamilton Select Board is going to make their decision on the floor. That's what I was told. And then Jim, do you want to speak?
Hi, Jim Purdy, Chair of the Wenham Finance. The Wenham Finance Committee has voted 4-1 in favor of the project. And our reasoning for this is, first and foremost, to try to get at the ballot. Because the ballot question, we believe, brings out a larger portion of the population to make a decision on this. Secondly, Wenham, like Hamilton, voted to establish the stabilization fund. And that was clearly enunciated last year that those stabilization dollars would in fact go towards the field. And that vote at Wenham at least was a good plurality, I think the third piece, as Wenham looked at this, and there was dissenting. There was a lot of discussion. Eric came to 2 of our meetings and discussed it in detail. The third piece of this is the commitment that a significant portion of the community is making to this project. So, in short, we wanted to support on town meeting floor. It may not be voted on town meeting floor, but if it is, then it gets to the ballot, which then represents, I think, a broader range of the community.
Thank you, Jim. Jim, do you have any idea of the select board? Oh, I don't want to put you on the spot for another board, but I don't know if you knew off the top of your head. I don't know. I haven't heard.
Peter Clay is here.
Oh, Peter's right. Sorry. Should we give Peter the mic? Or?
Unanimous support.
Okay, select board, Wenham, unanimous support. Thank you, Peter. I forgot we were sitting there. All right, we have a question here. Bill, do we answer all your questions?
Permanent.
Permitting, thank you. Permitting, this is my normal voice. In general, you don't need a microphone. Permitting is the red section that we show, the main field and the other baseball field, that has been already permitted. The things that are waiting for permit, they're going through the process right now with Concom, is the softball field and the tennis court, and then the relocation of the pits for discus, shot put, javelin.
Anything besides Concom?
So that's a great question. The permitting would shift to planning, right? If we moving forward with something like a concession stand building, anything that comes up off the ground now involves the planning board. You want to talk to that? My friend Tom's on crutches here, so he's going to stay seated.
Thank you. After we finish with the Concom, and if we get a positive vote, we'll then get into further design of the amenities buildings, that will require a building permit, site plan review through the planning board, and we'll also have to work with the town of Hamilton's health department to work with the septic issues. So, the first hurdle right now is the Concom to see if it's feasible to actually move forward with softball and tennis before move forward with the building.
Just quickly, is lighting under the purview of the site plan review planning board?
I believe it is, that's correct.
I think that something to keep in mind in lighting too is, I'll keep going back to when I played sports many moons ago, but there were 8 light stanchions around stadiums that would light up the stadium and the surrounding half miles into the neighborhood. The lighting has changed now where you go to either 1 or 2, right? 2 on each side of the field to be able to light it with a much more focused LED lighting versus some of the older, halide, I think they're called halide or mercury halide or something, that were just uncontrollable. I think the reality now with lighting is they can focus a lot more. And again, we'll put those plans out there, but lighting does come under planning. Anything that leaves the ground, is from what I've been told, comes under planning board. Yes?
Hi, I'm Jackie Miller. We are immediate abutters who come right along with the school fields. And our son graduated here and had a great experience. And we understand how important it is to have good facilities, and even going by, we want to have good facilities for our kids. I concur with all the concerns about the safety of the materials being used, having recycling of it, the water table, all of that. I do also think that, I wonder how it was prior to COVID and prior to the last extraordinary summer. Last year, every field in this area, whether it be equestrian, parks, all those athletic fields, we've never seen anything quite like that. And so this does come on the heels of what was extraordinary. And I'm sure we had struggles before, and I'm sure that made this really the top of concern. I'm not sure that we'll endure that again, hopefully. And whether we were doing kind of okay before, and whether there could be other things that are organic or irrigation, maintenance, that would avoid having to put in more artificial things.
Yeah.
Kids walk out the door, they're on concrete, then they're on like that, the track has to be. And then now if the grass is not real, our kids are walking out into what is completely unreal. So that was just
I'm going to let Craig answer the duration going backwards, just the things he's been here long enough to spend some time.
Yes, thank you. As far as did last year make an extraordinary difference, last year was not different for us in terms of resulting grass coming in October as any other year. You could take the pictures that Eric had up there, the degenerating grass over the course of the fall, and it could be any year for the last 10 years. So from that standpoint, we did get a little bounce after COVID, slightly, because nobody used it for 4 months, which is ultimately what these fields, if you were gonna, we talk about the soccer teams and the NFL, those fields have the benefit of rest where ours don't. And just dating back to one of the original goals of the project was to bring every team back on campus, and I'll give you an example. One of the reasons our stadium field degenerates even faster now is the field hockey team used to play down by the library. And they had to come back here for during the season after COVID because we needed to be in a gated place so you could check people in. And now they love playing here. And so it's hard for me as the athletic director to say, no, I'm sorry, even though you want to play in the stadium like your peers, you're booted down the street for no good reason other than we're trying to save the fields that don't work. So there's been no difference year after year after year. We can make small improvements, but eventually the field disintegrates to an unplayable, unsafe way where we have to go off-site. Just trying to answer your question.
It's important to know, too, COVID threw a curveball at us. We had 4 seasons of athletics during one of the years where they thought, okay, we're going to break the season down. The MIA shifted to 4 seasons where they put football in this, it was called a wedge season, which was in our mind. Personally, I would not have done that, but that was the MIA directed us to do that. So, again, on the fields, it snowed, and it was ice, there was all kinds of things, so that even rips it up even more. The difficulty with high school timing is related to when the sports start. The first groups on the field tend to be football in the fall, and they go through a whole fall season. You want to be able to seed and replenish in the spring, but you can't because our spring season literally starts next week on the 20th, right? March 20th. So the spring season start early now, so you really, again, don't have time to rest the field unless you say, okay, everybody else is going to go somewhere else to practice for the whole month of March and April. We try to go out on March and April, maybe April, May. But by May, the seasons start to end, and then we go into tournament play. So it's just this weird timing of how school sports works as well. It's not as clean as we would like to be able to say, okay, we have this huge window of time. And we hope to be able to do this project so that we can invite members of the community in to use the track and use the tennis courts and be part of the greater project as well. So it's weird. If you go back to my first days here, we were having the same conversations, like where are we going to rent out and where are we going to come up with the money to pay to have our tennis team practice in Ipswich or Manchester or Gordon or somewhere else. We have to pay, not only for the use of the fields, we also have to pay for busing, so the costs start to develop really quickly. So I think I go back to my first and second year when we were having these same conversations of like, okay, where are we going to put this team, and this team can't play here. We're calling youth and saying, sorry, youth can't participate on Sunday because we need to get this field to break. So it's kind of multi-compounding problem. So Thank you for your question. Other questions? Yes. Okay.
Yeah, just really want to acknowledge the juggling that you do to get these kids to, like you're saying, the spring season is going to start in a matter of weeks, and so you've got them planned on other fields. And so I really want to commend the art of getting these kids onto fields on higher ground, be able to play sports where it drains and is dry, and is a more logical place for the sports to be played. But I'm curious, you've got a bird's eye view that I have no idea about. This is one little piece of a much larger educational infrastructure in these two towns. And this is a small piece of that infrastructure. And I wonder if you can share with us, from your perspective, I mean, this is a $15 million project, but what else exists in this, and what's the context of this in the larger? You mentioned some of the need for science improvement for the science department right here in this very building. That doesn't come cheap, and so I'm really curious to know what the other demands really are that our kids need in order to be able to excel in this modern world.
Great question. Jim was waiting for me to answer this one. He asks me at every meeting, because it's real. It's real. I mean, I'll give you the first thing that we've dealt with quite a bit: the roof of this building. The roof of this building leaks like a sieve. Everywhere you go in the building, you will run into buckets and barrels and all kinds of things. We have submitted to the state to get that project approved on their, they do a renovation project wish list, if you will. So schools are able to submit their statement of interest and say, hey, we'd like assistance with putting on a new roof on our high school. We've been denied 3 years in a row, and the program has now been shut down so that they can move the $75 million that they had in that program to the building program because of the skyrocketing costs of building and building materials over the last few years. So we would be submitting right now, again, for a roof project, and what they do is it's based on the number of age of your roof versus all of the other roofing projects that are being requested at that same time. So they come up with a kind of an average age and say, oh, if you qualify if your roof is 28 years old, and then the reality of the cost, I'm going to guess between $4 and $5 million. That's the number we've heard to replace the entire roof on the high school. And then we did put some money aside to study what it would cost for the science lab, because we honestly don't know. So in the school budget, the FY24 budget on the town meeting, there was a line for a study to be able to look at that and get a real number. I think it's important to know. There's also an elementary school project out there that we just set aside $1.2 million. We're in feasibility, which means we're looking at that project and the reality of where it goes, how it gets built, what it looks like, what the grade levels look like. So we're in that process right now. That could be between 90 and 100, $110 million, which in that case, unlike this case, the state would reimburse us. Currently, our reimbursement rate from the state for that project is 47.6%, which is good. We can improve that. Tom and I have talked about how we can improve that. We can get more by looking at LEED certification for our buildings to be able to make them environmentally friendly, looking at how we heat them, how we cool them, types of things like that. So there's a long way to go for that. Still probably 4.5, 5 years out, but it's on the docket. I think it's important to know that this elementary school was built 15 years ago. Windows have to be replaced. We're in that realm now of how do we do that. So we're looking at that cost. What else did I miss, Tom? The middle school, yeah. Did I miss any of the big items? The building. Yeah. There are smaller items. I mean, I've been dealing with ADA accessibility projects. You'll see in the FY24 budget, there's $300,000 put aside to fix the lights in here. Our lighting is done. We've been told, that we can't go any further with the electrical and the lighting in this facility. There's $126,000 that's set aside for the Bucher gym and auditorium in that budget, because if If you have been in there, it's probably the same from when it was built. It's really, we want to bring it kind of back to life. And then we'll see, there's one more. Smart board replacement. So we're doing technology replacement across the district, which over a 3-year period is approximately $750,000. So if you are aware of what a smart board is, a digital screen that's at the front of the room, usually by 4 by 5 feet. Teacher uses it, touch displays, has kids come up and use it. Those are between 8 and 10 years old, about 4 years beyond their actual life. So, it's like, as you go into classrooms and you start to see a teacher struggle with the technology, you understand it from that perspective when they spend their weekend designing this whole presentation and then they can't do it in their classroom. So we put some money into that, and that's built into previous budgets and current budgets, been a longer term step project. We've increased our Wi-Fi access points. We put in last year's budget, I think it was $250,000, $240,000 to replace the wireless access points across the district. And we suffered in that one where it took 8 months to get the actual equipment in. So those types of upgrades are what we're focusing on, trying to build them in. We've been trying to take advantage of excess and deficiency that was caused over COVID and beyond. So if you've been involved in any school committee meetings over the past few years, you have seen that it's been impossible to hire. So when you start to say, all right, we're going to hire our, 300 teachers, which we use that as a number, we don't have 300 teachers, but just use that number, 300 teachers, I may not be able to fill all of those. Last year I had 30 positions that went unfilled most of the school year. That starts to add up very quickly when you start to see what they get paid and what their benefits cost. So those monies have been taken advantage of. We funded OPEB to the tune of $2.2 million last year, which is our other employment benefits for people who are retired, which we had, I think, 100,000 in that account, if any. So we've met that over time. So we're continuing to try to take advantage of the monies that we have, like this $1.7 million. If this wasn't there, we'd be coming to add that on top of the debt exclusion. I think people need to keep in mind, and I'm just going to use round numbers here, go back to the numbers I had in this presentation right here. Say this comes down to $10 million, there's still the 2/3, 1/3 split between the communities based on the assessment. So if you're looking at $10 million, a third of that would be Wenham responsibility, and 2/3 of that would be Hamilton responsibility. I think that's important to keep in mind too. Generally, debt like that is allowed to be taken out over the time span of the usability. So when we talk to our bonding agent, they would say to us, we probably would look at 10, maybe 12 years to take that debt out over time, which reduces the cost over time, but drags it out to a point where we have to make a decision, because that's right around the same time you're replacing the turf again. So there's some financial decisions that need to be made along the way to do this appropriately. Craig, can you choose a question? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we just want to build you.
Were those 30 teaching positions full-time positions there?
So it's a combination. I shouldn't use teaching. So there's 300 positions in the district, but not all teachers. 146 are teachers. Teachers, assistants, crossing guards, cafeteria workers. You can ask Brian how many days a year he serves lunch here at the high school still, because we're not able to fill positions. He and his assistant double up in the caf during the day. So it's a combination of things, mostly things like speech language pathologist, which is a fairly pricey position to hire. You can't find them right now. You just can't find them. So those types of positions have remained open, which has given us these excess funds, which we've been trying to use to offset costs that would generally be delivered to the taxpayer. So we've already been hit. So we're trying not to do that again and trying to use it wisely. Like this space here is a great example. Kids use this space. They compete in this space. Like our kids just took a top 3 last week's Drama Fest, but we can't ever host it here because we don't have the ability without the proper lighting and electrical. So we put $30,000, $30,000 into just fixing the electrical in here to run it. Because last town meeting, if you remember, if you came in during town meeting last year, there were cords running down that hallway, and that hallway, just to get town meeting running because of the deficiency. So those are a lot of the things we're doing along the way, and trying to take advantage of the funds we have at hand. You know, and it's really a game of catch up, I think. So many things have gone undone for so long that, you know, since October, we have done a lot in the district to really bring things up to par, including this space, in our technology spaces, and certainly, you know, we want to continue to do that. But at some point, that reality goes away.
Well, thank you for your efforts.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Question?
Yes, good morning. My name is Greg Horner.
Hi, Greg.
I have a couple questions. Hi. And I apologize, I showed up a little late, so if you've already covered some of this.
You better come back tomorrow for the second.
Yeah. First, a comment. I think generally I'm concerned about the artificial turf field and the health and environmental impacts of that. We have a plastic bag ban, and we gone through and got rid of plastic straws and a lot of other things, and a huge plastic field. It doesn't really seem like an environmental choice to me. I'd like to. I think the PFAS issue is a real one. I've also heard that while you can change the crumb infill, I don't believe anyone's been able to figure out how to do the quote grass part without PFAS. I think there's some pending state legislation to potentially ban PFAS. I don't know how that could potentially impact the project. I wanted to ask two questions. One, about the summertime use of the fields. I understand these fields can get dangerously hot when it's really sunny and on hot days. I don't even know if the fields get used over the summer and how to address that. And two, Portsmouth, New Hampshire, maybe you've talked about their example where they voted to say, yes, we'll do a turf field only if it's PFAS free. And then they said, okay, great, we'll do that. We sourced the PFAS free field, they put it down, and they tested it right before it was put down, and it turned out it still had PFAS in it. What do you take away from that? What do you learn? How do we avoid making a similar mistake if we go to that same route?
Sure. We recapped our discussion along the way today, but I can do it individually or I can do it in front of everybody again. Those are all questions that were asked today. I think the port, believe it or not, the Portsmouth was the example I used. Their installer, Weston Sampson, is the closest letter to right now that I could find. It's the fall of 22. And their letter about the quote all fields was that they were all below acceptable levels. So that's the only information I could get out of what I searched online. The newest, I guess, the most up-to-date information on that project. And as far as I understand, they have moved forward with another one, another field, but I'm not 100% sure. Do you want to talk?
Yeah, just quickly about using the field in hot weather. Two main points that I think are worthy to be mentioned. One is there are really no school sports in the summer. It's basically spring and fall. They probably would be used early in the morning for workouts and probably late at night for youth sports, like after 5 o'clock. The other thing with all high school sports that exists, no matter what type of field you have, grass, whatever, is there's a heat index chart that we have to follow, that if the heat index based on a wet bulb temperature is so much at a given spot, there's different protections for the athletes. So the heat on the field would never be an issue simply because there's already rules in place to make sure that doesn't happen.
I'm going to ask Matt to answer some of this as well. Matt is our representative from Yale, who's a designer on the project.
So all the fields will also be provided. We call them quick connects. They're the little handholds that have hose spigots, and whenever a field gets hot, we can use those to spray down the field. It's just water, no chemicals or anything like that. Just your typical water. Because most fields that we do have existing irrigation, so we would remove the irrigation and just kind of tee right off of that. So anytime there's a concern about heat, there'll be normally a couple, one or two hoses there that you can hose down the whole field and get it to safe temperatures. And different infill materials do kind of attribute to different heat levels as well. So depending on what infill you use, you can kind of try to nip that in the butt. keep the heat down.
We also get a required heat, we have heat, did you say this, correct? Heat requirements from MIA, that's a big factor for us. We've had to shut sports down because of heat just on our regular fields, so those rules pertain to every MIA event. Certainly the reality of, okay, what about someone who comes onto the field to work out during the summer? I think this reality of signage too, to be able to say, if it's 90 degrees out, I suggest you're not running on the field. Not that if you want to, but you never know. So there's from the kid-student perspective, there are things in place already for any fields, any athletic events that we adhere to, even on things like field days and things like that kids would participate in. We generally look to Craig to say, what's it called, a wet bulb reading? Yeah, it's a wet bulb reading. So.
Thank you for this meeting today. I have two questions. One is it your intent, if the first three items on the board there are approved at town meeting, to reduce that $15 million amount?
That is my intent. I've been saying it for months. I can't remember when I first said it. I think it was just moving into the October special town meeting was the first time people publicly probably heard it. Yeah, my intent, and just so you know, the article reads in town meeting, the article specifically states, and the town's asked us to work with them on developing this article, that $15 million is being asked for. Excuse me, legally we have to put the whole cost of the project, the whole ask, if you will, on the article. That's a requirement for transparency. Everybody agrees to that part. And then it goes on to say, and will be further reduced by any donations, outside funding sources, grants, by whatever amount that is. So that has specifically been built into the article for town meeting, both, I think everybody's agreed on that, right? So that is the full intention, to be able to use those numbers behind me, and anything else we can get for that project. So if the HWAFIC group shows up with $3 million, that would further reduce the cost. And like I said, that fundraising doesn't stop on town meeting day. They're committed to continue to fundraise as we work through this project and continue to work with the community on it.
Okay, and my second question was that earlier you mentioned that last night you were reading, I think you said a 500-page report. I've been having trouble sleeping at night, so I was wondering if I could borrow that.
You could. I would need several people with their own science background to figure out a lot of it. But the text is interesting to read. The EPA, for people that don't know, have done 2 reports on crumb rubber specifically that are available on their website, and they are lengthy reads and certainly interesting if this is what you're into. But a lot of it is tabling scientific data that relates to numbers and measurements along the way. They're doing a number of studies on different, I think there were 10 different infills, and then they looked at the variability between infills. So there's a lot of information there if you're interested in it. I continue to read, people send me stuff every day, sometimes with hate mail attached, but it's, it is what it is. If anybody here has something I haven't seen, I would love to see it. I continue to read and learn. And even having just conversations with the general public. A big part of the problem with the school district is the school district operates sometimes in this little bubble. If you don't have kids in school, you don't know what's going on. So these meetings too are probably something we should do more often in the future, just in general, to build that, give people the opportunity to say, what is going on behind those brick walls I drive by all the time? So, yeah, there's a lot going on in the school district. There are a lot of things that we need to do with our buildings, and this elementary school project could free up some land for at least Hamilton to be able to look at a project that might be something other than residential real estate, which helps out in the bigger game. So for people who don't know, we lease the buildings, the elementary school buildings from the towns. We do not own them, we only own this property. So the reality is the towns own it in the big scheme of things. That's where all the money comes from. But the elementary buildings are leased, so we decided to combine Cutler and Winthrop into one building. That opens up 1, possibly 2 pieces of land for further development or at least community discussions on what to do. And I know that's going on with the Gordon Cromwell site as well, the seminary site as well. There's a lot of conversations in town about that.
Other question?
Yes, Patrick.
Hi, Mr. Tracy.
How are you?
Good. My name is Janina Trujillo. I live across the high school, straight across. I don't have children anymore here. But one of the things that attracted me to the community was the organic choices of the community. And that, the beauty of it, the health of it. I came from Quincy, Boston, and moved my family here, hoping for that, those choices. And I and it is concerning to see how the fumes of the fumes of these materials, well, it is available. Why are we even wondering, is it healthy to have these fumes and these kids exposed? Our children deserve health and organic as much as possible, and leave extra work for staff, for the school system. They deserve that. Whatever resources we can give them, organic and healthy.
Yeah. I think it's a fine balance, and the reason we're having these conversations so that we can understand where people come from. I mean, I also know that you're a beekeeper, which is an important environmental piece of it, and part of that is in, okay, what does this look like in the big scheme of things? What if we went organic? What if we did this? What if we did that? And, those are all still discussion points, but the bigger piece is we're trying to meet a lot of the needs as we presented today with youth and physical education classes and our high school, middle school athletics and things like that. So there's this fine line we're trying to find where the kind of balance point is.
And even some of the choices that I'm hearing, organic choices, I mean, there's a lot of allergies and stuff. And these fumes coming, at some kids are allergic to walnuts or coconut, and some of the materials that I hear, making choices for these.
Right. And again, decisions haven't been made because the reality is we know that. We deal with allergies every day in our schools. We have some schools that are peanut free, for instance. So there are realities to how you deal with that. There was an individual who sent me an email just saying, listen, my kid had an allergic reaction on a field that had a nutshell infill, so I get that as well. So those are realities that we have to look at. We do that now with pesticides and some of the things that we have to use on our fields for fertilizer and stuff like that. So there are these weird trade-offs, like, okay, which one's better? And in the big scheme of things, are either one better or not? So it's a long conversation, and again, it's really working with Gail, having discussions locally. There are a number of communities who have had turf fields. Piggery's had theirs for several years. I kind of wish that we all had the foresight to say, let's test that as it goes and see, what the differences may have been over time. It would have been good data to have. Same with anything, when you look at Ipswich or Manchester, there's a lot of different things going on. We're trying to keep our eyes wide open and compare notes along the way too. I appreciate that. I get it. I understand. Tom.
I really wish I could stand up and face you folks. I did want to speak on some of the ecological concerns. I just wanted to make sure that people, kept in mind a valuable resource that we would be saving, and that's water within the towns, which has a finite limit, switching to artificial turf. We wouldn't have to be watering nearly as much. And also limiting the amount of fertilizers, herbicides, and pesticides. Superintendent Tracy said there are trade-offs. Another piece I just wanted to, a quick analogy is as you're walking out of this place, and you notice that we have vinyl composite tile throughout all of our school buildings, and that's for durability. That's why we don't have hardwood floors throughout school buildings. And I use that analogy with artificial turf. It's really the durability.
And certainly, thank you today for coming and spending time with us and asking questions. And I am available if you need to ask me a question, please ask. I generally don't hide. If you want to come in and visit me in my office, great.
I think it's important for me in my role. If you don't know me, I'm generally at most meetings in town for various reasons, but I believe in the community. I really believe in our school district. I think we should lead the way in many ways, and projects like this will help us to move forward in that direction. But I think, again, opening these conversations up to the community who may not generally be involved in discussions within the school district is important, so we'll continue to do that. Even you know, whatever happens at town meeting, this will go to town meeting and people will decide, and then that decision moves from there, as we know. And I think Jim said it well, you know, it may go through town meeting, but get through the ballot. We don't know. So these are all kind of ifs that we're waiting on, and we'll continue to wend our way through all the different pieces of the puzzle as we go. So thank you all very much for coming. Again, any questions, please reach out either by email, call me and come, you know, meet me for a cup of coffee, whatever. But I really appreciate it. Appreciate everybody taking the time on this Saturday. So hopefully you have a great day, a great weekend. Thank you.